welcome to today's webinar, TDR Global Asia's webinar on exploring funding strategies for research, a dual approach through grant writing and crowdfunding. I'm Aditya and I will be your host for this session. Thank you so much everyone for joining our webinar today. But first, before we begin, we want to share a little things to you. Now we have TDR Global Discovery. It's a platform from TDR Global, where you can network with more passionate scientists and experts who have been working with TDR research on the research of infectious disease of poverty. If you're interested in creating your profile in our TDR Global Discovery platform, you can scan the QR code in the screen, in your screen right now with your phone. And TDR Global, actually, we have this interesting platform where you can also showcase your research, showcase your experience, finding mentor and mentees. We also have regular webinars and regular newsletters. I will share with you the information after this webinar. But today we have a very interesting topic and a very amazing speakers with us today. We're thrilled to have Dr. Eneyi. Hi, Dr. Eneyi. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, or good afternoon, perhaps, in your place right now.
Good
Yeah,
afternoon.
good afternoon. We're thrilled to have Dr. Eneyi with us, who will be sharing insights on how to effectively navigate grant writing and crowdfunding to secure funding for your research. Dr. Eneyi is an experienced researcher and she's an experienced lecturer also. She is here to provide us with practical tools and strategies to make research funding more accessible and achievable. But just a quick reminder before we dive in, please keep your microphones muted during the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box or raise your hands during the Q&A sessions at the end of Dr. Eneyi's presentation. And since I see that a lot of you are very interested to have this webinar started right away. So Dr. Eneyi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Aggie. Thank you to the host and organizers of this monthly webinar session hosted by the TDR Global Asian region. I'm really excited to be here today. I'll try to share my screen and hopefully you can see my screen all right.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, all right then, perfect. Let me, oops. Oh, sorry. I think I stopped sharing abruptly, but I will go back to share. Okay, okay, perfect. Does this work now?
Yes, it works perfectly.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you very much for that kind introduction. It's my sincere pleasure to join you today and talk on this very key topic. We've done some work on crowdfunding as it were, and with our SESH team, which is the CHI China team, we also organize yearly grant-a-thon workshops, which is sort of like a grant writing training sessions for researchers, early and mid-career researchers. And we've been delivering those sessions for quite a while. So it's really my honor to stand here today on behalf of our team to just sort of talk a little bit about some of the lessons and some of the sort of key messages when considering grant writing and funding for research projects. So today, I think we all know the topic, but we're going to be exploring funding strategies for research, and then we're looking at a dual approach, thinking of some key things to consider when applying for grants, and also an alternative funding mechanism that we've discovered, which is crowdfunding. So in terms of the outline, I'll give a brief intro into grant writing and go through the very, very basic considerations. Like, so this is like Intro to Grant Writing 101. What should I be thinking even before you begin to write that really thought through, very strong proposal? What are the basic things? What are those basic boxes that we need to check? So these are the key considerations. I'll introduce crowdfunding, some of the success tips and key messages, and then close with some acknowledgements. So intro to grant writing, I'm sure it needs no definition, but we all know what it is as researchers, as students, or even working in other domains, and we have ideas for projects, but we are limited with funding for our project. We all oftentimes have that need to sort of acquire funds to deliver our projects. So basically, research writing is actually identifying those funding opportunities, the call for ideas, call for proposals, defining your research objectives or tailoring it to suit those calls, writing the proposal, all in the aim to obtain the funds and deliver the projects. So I've put in some tips. Hopefully this would be of value and of help to the audience today. So typically, it's a funding stream for a research or a project. It could come in form of a research grant. Sometimes you have fellowships that are mentored, or sometimes you just have awards, like you've done an exceptionally preliminary work or a pilot work. The results look really interesting and promising, and there are funders who are really interested in like the next step or the next step, so they give you an award. But all of these at some point are competitive. Is it doable? Yes, it is. Can we get a grant? Yes. You listening, I talking, can we all get a grant? Yes. There is no one single straightforward method or formula that once you impute the figures, you get the answer and you get the grant, but it's all subject to different conditions and different factors, which hopefully I will be discussing in depth in the next few minutes. So before you actually start writing, because grants proposals is all about writing, but you don't just open the book or open the document and start typing away or start writing away. There are things you need to consider. There are certain aspects you need to check before you actually do the main work of writing that proposal. And what are some of these key things to look at? First of all, research the funding agency. Research the funding agency. Your projects must be a good fit. What you're proposing, people fund different things. Funders have different interests. And as a result, you need to understand their key priorities before you actually start writing. So look at the funding agency, do your research, read up about them. What are their research priorities? What are they known to fund? What are previous projects they funded? In what light, in what method? So do a bit of background research. And in terms of writing the proposal, the writing actually comes at the later stage, because you need to do all of this and make sure you're actually putting all that energy and all that work for the right agency, to the right funders at the right time for the right project. Secondly, you want to identify some key persons to contact. Who are these? Who's in charge of the funding program? Typically, at the end of most funding calls, you could see a contact. It can be a personal contact, it can be an info team or a queries team, but there typically is a monitored email or contact once the funding call is open. You want to go ahead and make a contact. Oftentimes, we have found that it is very, very, very helpful when we actually initiate contact, because we want to ask questions. Oh, I have this idea. This is my situation, or this is my position. Do you think it is feasible, or do you think this will be responsive to your call? And oftentimes they do respond. As far as the call for ideas or the call for applications or proposals is open, those contact emails are monitored, because people would contact them. Oftentimes, funding mechanisms are competitive, people are reaching out. And when you get a positive response to go ahead, it does have a query number. So it's always helpful to factor that into your writing at some point to say, oh, prior to preparing this proposal, we have checked with the program officer or the grant officer, and our project or our topic was deemed fit and responsive to this call. It always just helps to let reviewers know that you've done a thorough talk through before actually preparing your proposal. So other things you want to look at is the funder's website, study the website, look at all the links. There would be FAQs, there will be guidance documents, there might be YouTube videos. Sometimes they host webinars on what they are calling for and what they really want to fund. So ensure you study the website, you don't miss the dates, you don't miss the details of the call, you don't miss updated uh, or information with regards to that particular call. Look at any strategic or annual reports. What sort of institutions do they fund? What sort of projects do they fund? Do I have a chance? Are these similar to what I do? Look at presentations by the top officials. So this can be webinars about what they really want to fund and what they are really excited about. Like I said, if there's someone who has been funded by the program you're applying to before, do well to reach out to them. Oftentimes, people who have the experience of applying for those kind of grants would give you sort of like really, really rich feedback because they have the experience. They went through the initial stage, they went through the interview, they were successful at every stage. They sort of know how to navigate that particular funders. So do well to reach out if you know previous awards or awardees, study the funding opportunity and then the announcement. Just make sure you read everything there is to know about that call before you start writing. A proposal, we should know, is written more like a job interview than a journal article. So a lot of times we write publications, we do presentations of our results, and we present our data and results is different from how you prepare for a job interview. Some interference. Can we please mute? Thank you. So a proposal is more like an interview. You're going to sell yourself, you're going to market a product, you're going to tell them why you're the best person to receive the fund. For like an interview, you want to prove to them that you have the skills, you have the expertise to deliver on the job, you're the right person for the role. That's how you think when you're writing a job, a research proposal, a grant proposal. You want to let the funders know that you have the right team, you have the right skills, you have the right expertise, you're the best person to receive that fund, that money to deliver the project and to come out with the outcomes and the results. So oftentimes think of it as how you would prepare for an interview. For an interview is a thought through process. You think of how you look, you think of your dressing, you think of your composure, you think of what you want to say. You bring all your evidences, which are your credentials, your certificates, your published papers, whatever is needed. The same thing goes for the proposal. It's not just a paper you're writing or a journal article. Proposal, you want to prove to the funders that you have what it takes. So you put all these things together. In the dressing, how do you dress your proposal? What are the evidences? What have you done? How can you show that you have the right skills and expertise? So oftentimes think of a proposal like a job interview. And what will be your writing style? How do you write? So you have the expository writing and the persuasive writing. Now, neither of these is right or wrong. It depends on the context. It depends on the funders. It depends on what you're trying to market. But in terms of expository writing, you want to let them know that you've conducted this project or this experiment and is based on this theory. This is what you found. So you already have the sort of background. You already have like the pilot, you already have some information. You've looked in the literature. Most times you write in past tense, you report articles, you've looked at what's already out there, you've identified the gaps. That's expository writing. Sometimes you want to come in with a persuasive front. That's called the persuasive writing. So in this case, now you're convincing them that you want to conduct this project or this study or this experiment is based on this science, and this is why you should, you're convincing them. So it's not something that has been done. It's a gray literature, but you have done the science, you have identified the gap, and you want them to give you these. And oftentimes these are for grants, for fellowships, and you write in the future tense. So take note. It's oftentimes not advisable to mix both past tense and future tense because then you tend to confuse your reviewers. Pick a stand. Are you writing with an exploratory focus on what you've done and all the sort of background experiences, or are you writing specifically to persuade the funders to give you this money? So there are two basic writing styles. It's always helpful to choose one and then stick to that as you go ahead. So going back to some of the preparatory um, plans, things to explore, read again the announcement clearly. Now, you want to check yourself because oftentimes for grants, it's always niche and focused to or targeting a particular group of people. It could be geographical. So it would be for the funding may be limited to people in certain regions, maybe in Asia or in Africa or in a different part of the world. Sometimes eligibility is by career stage. Sometimes they want really experienced researchers, so associate professors, full professors. Sometimes they are looking for early career researchers, so just about to complete a PhD, or you must have completed your PhD within the first 5 years. So look at things like eligibility for your location, eligibility for the institution. Sometimes they'll say you have to be in an official institution of higher learning or education where you have that affiliation to apply. So you just really want to check all of the boxes with regards to eligibility. Another thing that's important is dates. Depending on how far your idea is thought through and formed, or if you have drafts or you haven't started writing, the date is very important. If you have not started to draft the proposals, then you need to look at the date and ensure you have enough time to the deadline to be able to develop your proposal, a sound and rich and thought through proposal. If it's something that you've written before, it's not yet funded, you're still looking for ways to sort of strengthen and, reinforce the proposal, then if the date is closed, that's fine because you already have a basis. You're only just updating and strengthening that particular application. But depending on where you are with your idea and your proposal, the date is very important. Make sure you mark the date, put it on your calendar, put 2 days to funding call deadline, 3 days to funding call, and then on the deadline. So you keep getting these reminders and you're not sleeping on it. Find out who the program officer is. So I talked about that earlier, like making an initial contact based on our experiences. That's really helpful because sometimes it might not come across clearly on the call for applications on their website, what they are really looking for, who's eligible. But sometimes this initiation and these discussions with the program officer or the funding body actually clarifies a lot. You may just be wasting your time applying for something that's not within your region or not within your remit. So if you know them, have you talked to them before? If not, can you initiate a discussion about the grant to let them know you will be applying? Find out how many awards will be made or how many awards will be funded at the end of the day, and what's the review criteria. Really, what are they looking at? Some people only assess the proposal. Some people assess the proposal. They access the lead PI, so the researcher, your characteristics, like who you are, your background, what you've done, your experience is also assessed and is also score driving. They assess your institution or your facility as well. So all of these will be score driving. So find out the review criteria and how that fits with your current situation. What's the maximum award of the grant? So how much are they willing to give at the maximum? Most funders will state that in their funding call. They will let you know how much it is in total they would be funding. They would be funding. So you need to know, because then it gives you an idea of how you structure your project, your objectives, what you want to do, how long, who you need to bring in, and basically what you can actually do. Is this a cost share? Do they want you to find some additional funding and then they will fund part of it? Or if they fund you, you need to find another source of. So these are things you need to consider. Do you have a team? Is it a solo project, or would they allow collaborations? Like if you have one set of expertise, maybe as a qualitative researcher, and they want something on randomized control trials or quantitative data, do you have someone who can complement that? Can you apply as a team or as a group? Read the description specifically. Know the kind of project they are looking for before you actually go ahead. Um, One thing to also think about is the reviewers when you're writing or thinking of writing a grant proposal. The reviewers, usually, they are not experts in your specific area of research. Sometimes they might come from diverse fields. So you need to be careful on how you sort of structure your work. You have to read through a lot of proposals in a relatively short time because that's their work. So you have to make the work easy for them. I'll talk a little bit about what you should be doing when writing your proposals. Um, maybe they may be in a very unconducive environment, maybe in a flight to a conference, or they're actually in a conference where someone is presenting and they're trying to meet deadlines in reviewing your grants. You need to make it as easy and as clear. Sometimes they are paid or they are not paid enough. A lot of times it's volunteer, so they won't really give it their best. So you need to put in your best. So as soon as they see it, your proposal stands out. Don't in any way say, oh, I think the reviewers will understand what I mean, or they would sort of understand what they are not in your field. They might not have the best motivation to be reviewing your proposal. So you have to put in all of this and actually give it your best shot. There are two types of reviewers. Some of them work for the funders. For those that work for the funders, it's easy because then their motivation is according to the funding body or the funding agency priorities, their vision, their mission, and all of that. So if they work for the funder, then all well and good. All you need to do is find out the vision and priorities of the funding body and align your project. Some may be volunteers. When it's volunteer, their motivation is not very clear. So you actually need to select, they are looking for quality, they are looking for innovation, they are looking for something that's new, that's different, what's up to date in research. In that case, you need to put in more work, like why is this new? Why is this innovative? Why should this be funded? So think carefully about who would be reviewing your application. Reduce your reviewers' cognitive burden. What does that mean? Basically, don't give them additional work. Them reviewing the proposal is work alone. How best can you reduce the stress that comes with reading multiple proposals? Even when they say we are funding 10 proposals, the proposals and the application come in hundreds, sometimes in thousands, and they have to review every single one for eligibility. And once it's eligible, they have to actually send it out to review. So reviewers are overloaded with proposals. You don't want to add to that burden. How do you do this? SMART goals. I'm sure a lot of us would be very familiar with our SMART objectives because we may have done one project or the other, and this has always been repeating from time immemorial. So make sure you set SMART goals. They are specific, very clear and focused. They are measurable, so you can quantify the outcome compared to other data. It's attainable, it's feasible, so you can actually achieve this. It's reasonable what you're proposing. Don't be overambitious. It's good to be overambitious, but reviewers can spot this and say this is not going to work, and that would kick you out of the competition of the reviewers. So make sure it's attainable, it's relevant, so it fits with what is needed, it fits with the gaps in the literature at that time. Look at the funders again, what are their strategic priorities, make sure it's relevant and it's timely. If you say it's a 12-month project, it's a 2-year project, what you're proposing actually is doable within that period of time, which is when you have the funding. Otherwise, you run into problems. So an example of a proposal summary or a goal that is not SMART is this project will examine teachers to see how they learn, what influences their teaching, and we use the result to help them be better at their jobs. It sounds nice. It sounds like, oh, this is a nice idea, but is it really specific? Is it measurable? Those parameters, those indices are not here. So it doesn't matter how nice what you've written looks like or how it sounds. Reviewers will always look for these parameters: smart, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, timely. They would look for that. So an example of a SMART goal or idea for a project is that this project will consider or conduct a statewide survey of 1,000 plus mathematician teachers and 35,000 students. So it's giving numbers in the area: 201 middle schools, in the area in Missouri to address the following research or educational objectives. You list them out. You list them out so they know exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what you aim to achieve. And then you go further to explain in terms of methods. Survey of students in County A will occur in so time. Remember the timeliness. So if it's a 2-year project, in year 1, what are you doing? In year 2, what are you doing? Which area are you focusing on? And this information will be collected in the survey, allow us to evaluate. So these are examples. You need to bring in the metrics. You need to bring in the location. You need to bring in the what's achievable, what's the timeliness, what's the duration, what exactly will you be doing. So this is how to structure a SMART summary or overall aim or goal of a project. Still on your reviewers and in your proposals, there are some do's and don'ts. So do not use big words, reduce cognitive burden. Do not use, unless those words cannot be replaced and they are part of your methods or they are part of your project. The terminology, maybe you're running a clinical trial, you're trying out a new medicine, and as part of the medicine, it's one like long pharmaceutical name. In those cases, yes, that's the name of the drug or the name of the main ingredient of your research is fine. But as much as possible in your description and explanation, avoid big words, avoid grandiose language that goes over and over. If you could say it in one simple, straight sentence, keep it straight and simple. Avoid run-on sentences. So we will do this and then come back and then explore and you keep using and then you've written a whole paragraph is one sentence. No. Short and simple sentences. Put a full stop, start again, it helps the reviewers follow you and process exactly what you're trying to say. Avoid walls and walls of text. I will talk about that later, like opening 5 pages and it's just text. Oftentimes break up text, use a nice table, a nice graphic. You could use figures as well. So what are some of the do's? Be clear, be concise, let your title just speak to the work. Let them read your title and immediately understand, okay, this is what this person is thinking of doing or proposing to do. For points that you need to emphasize, you could put them in bold fonts, you can italicize or underline. So these are key points. Again, I said break up, avoid walls of text. So you can break up text after a few paragraphs, put in a graphic to explain, a figure to picturize or summarize what you're trying to explain. Use tables, summarize long sections. Don't leave it run on. Have a clearly defined structure. Is this a background to the work? Are these my aims and objectives? What's the methodology? What are the proposed outcomes? How do I want to do my data analysis? So have a defined structure. Oftentimes reviewers, or sorry, the grant funding would have like a structure that you could actually follow. But if not, you try and put your proposals in a very clear and concise structure and write specifically to the review criteria. What are they looking for? Are they looking for methods? Put in a method section. Are they asked for list of objectives, aims, and goals? Put those down. Have they asked for outcomes or deliverables? Put those. Have they asked for a timeline? Have they asked for a Gantt chart? Make sure you write specifically to what they will be reviewing. Otherwise, you lose points because The reviewers would not go into your whole proposal and start to look for, oh, the aims is here, oh, the goals is here, oh, the method is here, oh, the analysis is in this section, is embedded here, oh, ethical consideration. No, they won't do that. So put the subheadings and make sure you respond to those review criteria. If they don't see it, they wouldn't have that patience to look for it within the body of your proposal, and you will lose points if it's core driving. Okay. Pay attention to the main parts of your proposal when you're writing. So what are these parts? The title, again, let it be clear, let it be concise and active. Let your title have that action. Let people see that this is actually going to do something, not just one very boring title. Because a good title makes the proposal more memorable. People would never forget, oh, this is what I'm reviewing. They even talk about your proposal, especially for important proposals to private foundations. Think about what would look good, like if it's going to make a news headline, like for them on their own newsletter, on their own blog. So we're excited to say we have funded blah, 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 your title, and it comes out really nice. It doesn't have to be academic sounding. So you can be innovative, you can be creative. What next? How do we, bring in something relatable, something more realistic that people can read? It doesn't have to be like very formal, like an academic piece of paper. You can be more creative and innovative with titles. And there are other parts of the grants as well you need to consider. I've talked about following the structure and the review criteria. In addition to that, look for formatting. Sometimes they will tell you specifically they want 5 pages under the strategy or the proposal, and those 5 pages, they want it in a particular font size. It can be Arial or it can be Times New Roman. They'll give you the font size. It must be no more than 12, double spaced. Make sure you follow all, look for those fine details. If there are word limits for each of the section, like the background, 500 words, stick to that, not write beyond that. If the method is 1,000 words, stick to that. So make sure you follow the structure. As much details as we provide, follow those. Oftentimes you can be screened out and not even passed on to review if your proposal does not meet those required structure. I've talked about using graphics to break up text. Budget is also very important. I'll talk a little bit more about it if we have time. Keep your budget within what's fundable, within the fixed amount that they're offering. Do not go beyond that. Otherwise, you might not be able to complete your projects in record time or even get your results. Look at what's fundable. Some would fund publications, some others would not. Some would fund dissemination to attend meetings or conferences, some would not. So look at what's fundable and actually put that in your budget justification. Timeline is always good to give the funders an idea of what you'll be doing at a certain time. So that's your T in your SMART way of reporting your proposal. So you can use Gantt charts, which is like a nice table. In month 1, we're doing this, month 2, and then you see how you build up to project completion. References, very important. It shows that you have read. It shows that you know what's going on in the area. It shows that you are currently knowledgeable with the latest updates. You have what the gaps are, and your project is actually working to add to the body of literature in that particular topic. So use references, prioritize what's relevant to what you're proposing and what's recent. So it's not that you're writing a proposal in 2024 and all your references are from 1994. That's not going to cut it. It just shows that you haven't looked at what's available recently. And if there's a genuine gap, say that up until now, there's no work in the area. So this is why this is needed. Very limited references. So also put that as a justification. Make sure your proposal is complete. Proposals are they also require additional documentation beyond the project narrative itself. So make sure they are complete. Look for additional information or documents. Sometimes they might ask for bio sketches. It's more like CVs of the people who are your colleagues or team members on that project. You might need letters of support from like the institutes or from other organizations that might be stakeholders in the group, access to equipment and facilities. How would you manage your data? Do you have any capacity building, capacity strengthening, postdoc mentoring? So look for all the specs. It would be on the guidance document and make sure you actually document how your project sort of tick all of these boxes. And timeliness again cannot be overemphasized. You need time to prepare. So all of these would actually take longer than you think. We can plan things and say, oh, I'll do this. But when you actually start to sort of implement and pull them together, it takes longer. Some of them are not within your control. So it might be your faculty or your departmental lead or your line manager to approve, and they're away on holiday. What do you do? Who's the next person who can sit in on their behalf? So um, try and factor eventualities that might come up, unforeseen circumstances, and always put in things early on. Don't wait for the last minute, because certain things might spiral out of your control. Not completing things as instructed can get you actually um, rejected even before review. So you need to follow and make sure it's complete. So that's like a very basic food for thought. I know we have limited time, but we do have our Grantoton session that goes into specific aspects stage by stage, and it's a whole series of webinars in a week with practical sort of aspects of writing. I can signpost it to, so there's only so little I can cover. But now I'd want to introduce you to crowdfunding, which we as a team has done work with in partnership with the WHO CDRO as an alternative funding mechanism. So what is crowdfunding? As the name suggests, I'm sure we might all be familiar or have an idea with experiences for like a GoFundMe or a public call for funding for a particular cause. All of these are mechanisms of crowdfunding. So crowdfunding basically engages large groups of people to make monetary and non-monetary contributions to a particular project. It actually occurs in stages, and there are key people at different stages. So it's a multi-stage process. You have key groups, but of these key groups, you have the creators, who is the person actually seeking the funding. You have the supporters, those are the backers and the beneficiaries or people who would contribute. So that's more like the public, the crowd, and we call them the supporters, and then the organizers. The organizers typically links the creator to the public or to the crowd or to the supporters or to the backers. So the organizer might be a platform, or it might be an institution, or it might be a channel. Most times we use platforms, like generally we have the GoFundMe platform, that would be the organizer. And more specifically for research studies, we have crowdfunding platforms like experiments.com. What's the need for crowdfunding? Well, for all the reasons why research funding is still difficult, and particularly in LMIC, you find out that many researchers are faced with very limited funding opportunities for their research projects. There's limited infrastructure, limited admin support. Potentially they face racism even when they're outside their settings, and all of these inherently inhibits funding to actually advance their research projects. So in response to all of these barriers, the TDR Global, in partnership with our team, launched a pilot program. We wanted to test crowdfunding to see if it actually works, and also build capacity for public engagement. I'll be showing some of the examples. So this was one of our pilot crowdfunding projects in Sri Lanka on community-based leishmaniasis that was funded about 3 years ago. What's the need for public engagement in crowdfunding? So with crowdfunding, it's different from grant writing. With grant writing, you're up against the funder and the reviewers. But with crowdfunding, you're up against the public. You're up against everyone out there, because you're putting it as an open call. So you really need to convince these people. And how do you need to effectively convince people to give towards your research project? You need a robust public engagement strategy. So oftentimes we do research without considering the public. Public are participants. They also pay for the research. Sometimes they are participants as patients. And you see most of the funding, big funding agencies now require public engagement because it's actually needed for ethical research. So what we did basically was to put together a practical guide for both public engagement and crowdfunding. Our time is going up really fast. But the practical guide really was to build momentum for LMIC researchers to be able to do effective public engagement and then go ahead to crowdfund for their research. So we did a review of the literature, we did a crowdsourcing open call, found some of the key points, we built consensus, sent it out for review, and then we have the practical guide, which is pictured here. So what the guide does really is that the purpose of the practical guide is to help build capacity, like I said, for researchers, especially those in LMIC institutions, in a broad variety of settings to sort of meaningfully engage the public and then launch crowdfunding campaigns that would be successful. So for crowdfunding, we did a SWOT analysis first. After we had the pilots, we wanted to see what are the strengths, is this of value? What are the issues with crowdfunding? What are the weaknesses? What does it profile? What are the added benefits? And what are some of the risks associated with crowdfunding? So that's a SWOT analysis, which I will share really quickly. So for the strengths, we found out that both from the review and the open call, crowdfunding will be suited for early career researchers and early stage pilot studies because you can't really crowdfund very large amounts. It's relatively small projects, so it's so like maybe small scale projects. It's relatively quicker and cheaper. All you need to do is put your idea, make it really robust compared to a grant writing that takes a lot of time, institutional approvals and putting a team together and all of the other things I talked about. In terms of weaknesses, limited awareness of crowdfunding as a concept would impact on LMIC settings. So people might not be aware. Most times the crowdfunding we do is for people who are sick or need some form of humanitarian help, but not really for research. Most organizers charge, that's the platform, like the GoFundMe platform or the experiment.com, they charge some fees, and it's only suitable, like I said, for raising small amounts. So it's limited. The kind of projects you can use crowdfunding for is actually limited. You can't do like a 5 or 10-year randomized control trial or drug development or test development, those large scale projects. In terms of the threats or the risks, few platforms are focused on LMIC researchers. So if you're based in an LMIC and you want to use crowdfunding and then using a high income platform, you know that all of those charges would actually impact on the amount you raise to deliver your project. There is no sort of rigorous peer review. So you don't have all the reviewers, stage 1, stage 2 interview for crowdfunding. So sometimes some projects that are not really robust and scientifically sound may be ended up being funded. Gaining public trust might be difficult. That's why we did a very robust public engagement strategy. But then if you don't have the public trust, then your chances of actually crowdfunding for research is very slim. And the opportunities, we found out that crowdfunding helps to democratize research, validate ideas on topics. Campaigners can actually grow their network. So people who sort of support your campaign inherently are interested in your research, and you can sort of build momentum for that. It's a suitable way for researchers to conduct like pilot projects or proof of concept projects. Then with those pilot work, you can then apply for larger grants. Remember when I talked about the exploratory writing and the persuasive writing, if you've done some work, you've got some preliminary data or early stage research results, when funders are interested in seeing what next, they are more easily prone to funding those sort of projects. So crowdfunding might actually give you that opportunity to do that small scale project and get that preliminary result to then apply for the larger funding. So these were our three sort of like test pilot project with crowdfunding with the TDR pilots. These were the three finalists that launched their campaign from Sri Lanka, from Thailand, and from Nigeria, and they were all successful. So we built capacity for public engagement and they launched their campaign. However, it was kind of small scale. So about 5,000 USD, but they exceeded the amount, 8,000, slightly exceeded, and 9,000. So all below 10,000 USD. So these are like 6 months to 12 months pilot projects, but we were able to tell from this pilot that crowdfunding is a feasible and alternative means of funding small-scale projects in low-income settings. In terms of the guide, you might be interested if you have not come across the guide before. It's available on the link top here, and you can have it as an interactive website. You can download it as a PDF. We did an introductory video, so you know what to expect in terms of the content of the practical guide. It is open access, so you could download it to your devices with no fees, and it actually contains practical examples of crowdfunding, which are the three case studies that were successful I shared earlier. So that brings us to my very, very quick summary of grant writing do's and don'ts, things to consider and think about, and also introducing crowdfunding to you. Before I go again, I'd like to say thank you to our core team, our working group, the end user group, and all of the reviewers who sort of contributed to our work, both on the grant writing webinars and also on the crowdfunding practical guide. And I'd like to say thank you very much again for having me today. I'll stop sharing and hopefully we still have some time for questions and answers. Sorry if I was a bit too fast. I just wanted to deliver everything before the hour so we can have a few minutes for questions. But thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eneyi. It was a really insightful presentation. Even I was amazed looking at how inspiring it is. And I think there's a lot of questions for you in the chat room. Okay, I will read some of the questions first. But if anyone wants to join us to ask directly through video, please raise your hand so our team can see you and align you to ask directly. First question is from Dr. Ajit Kumar, PV. What is your tips to follow word limit?
What is your tips to follow?
Word limit.
Word limits. Oh, word limits. Word limits. Very important. Um, it has to do with the meaning. What do you want to convey? And avoid repetition. If there is one word or one word that can explain what you want to say, instead of using three different words, then go for it. Oftentimes we have all these AI writing tools and all the software. You could use them instead of giving you the idea, you could use them to sort of structure your words and avoid things like but also, and then, instead use one word, avoid repetition, but keep the meaning. So I would say my sort of go-to for word limits is cut out repetition. Even if you've explained one sentence, you look at the other sentence, both of them are still saying the same thing. It's not a different point or an angle. Delete that sentence. One sentence is okay to describe or portray one point. So just basically avoid repetition, repeated sentences with the same meaning, repeated words that could mean the same thing, still yet, and also try and cut those down. Effectively, you would actually reduce word counts and be within the word limits and still convey the message you want to pass across to your reviewers.
Wow, okay. Dr. Ajit Kumar, I hope that answers your questions. If you have any further questions, you can follow up in the chat room. Uh, we move on to the next questions from Angita. Any tips for early career researcher that has not received any grant yet, but eager to start looking for one? How do I compete with the experienced and senior researchers?
That's a very interesting question. You have your niche. So you've defined yourself as an early career researcher. You've not received any grants. Look for the grants that actually are for early career researchers. There's no point going over and ambitious looking for those big 10-year, 10 million grants. Look for those small grants that say for eligibility, early and mid-career researchers. And you find out that most times they're actually funding proof of concepts or early stage or pilot studies. So look at what you're eligible for and you know that I tick the boxes instead of going for those bigger ones that, people that have done experience, they have a lot of experience, they've done amazing work in the area, they have all these fantastic references, and you can't even compete. So stick to your sort of profile, stick to your eligibility calls. And also, I just talked about crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is great. It works in low-income settings. Look at the practical guide. It's crowdfunding for you. In as much as you're applying for competitive grants and fellowship, also explore crowdfunding, because crowdfunding can actually give you seed funding to do your pilots, and then which gives you more sort of basis and rationale to apply for bigger grants.
Okay, hope that answers your questions, Sangeeta. If you have further uh, replies or questions, please feel free to ask. There's another question from Komarudin. How can networking with program officers enhance your chances of securing a grant?
Thank you. I think I mentioned this early on in the presentation. It's always very helpful to initiate discussion and make inquiries with the grant officer or the program officers, because most times they can even schedule a call with you and look at what you're proposing and tell you straight away, this is going to be responsive to our call. This is what we like. Or if not, they can give you ideas on how you can maybe structure your objectives or the focus of your proposal to be more responsive to their call. And like I said, again, it's always helpful when you have those dialogue and those discussions. Sometimes it doesn't come across because your case, they have a list of FAQs. FAQs is general, but your case might be very specific, and only the program officer might be able to look for the answers and the solutions to give you that direct and specific answer. And then when you've done all of that, it's always helpful to include in your proposal that you've actually spoken and engaged with a research program officer on query number. You can quote the query number, quote the call number, and that your work was actually deemed fit to go through the application process. All of this gives the reviewers the thought that you're serious-minded, you're really, really eager for the opportunity, you've done your groundwork, and it just gives you an edge.
Oh, wow, okay. So, Komarudin, that's your answer right there. I know you have more questions, I think, but we move on to the next questions from Arif Sapta Aji. This is very interesting, Eneyi. How can we estimate the budget if some point the budget is not clearly informed from the funder? I think most of us have seen this already. I think budgeting the research or study can determine our proposal election. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so how can you estimate the budget? That's a very tricky one, because again, it would depend on what you're proposing and also where you're proposing to do it. Conducting a research in a high income setting, if you're going to be doing a qualitative work, what you would give to maybe participants in interviews and focus group is different from what you would give to participants in LMICs. So you need to look at the context. You need to look at what you're proposing. If you're doing interviews, you're only providing incentive for people's time to speak to you. It's different from when you're doing a full-blown clinical trial that then you need people to come into clinics,
Je vous envoie un lien. On est
you
en
need to
train de parler. On va
do
chercher le financement.
and all of that. So you need to consider what you're proposing, what the project is. Some funders are good at giving you a limit, but when there is no limit, you then have to justify what funds you're asking for and for what purpose. If you're doing what kind of research, if it's just a survey, okay, at the end of the day, you might do a lucky dip or just maybe incentives, or you may need money for field workers. You may need money for, if it's a small scale project, can you just go around or can you do it online? If it's a large scale, multiple location, then you need field workers. Are you paying for field-based researchers? So you then look at what you need to deliver the project and cost it according to the context and according to the service provision or service delivery in that area. Funders know, especially when funding has been padded, they know, they can tell. So if what you're asking for is way beyond what you're proposing to do, that could actually kick you out. Another way is to look at similar projects like I said, speaking to people who's been funded on that particular award, it also helps. So ask them, how did you go about funding? What did you experience? How was your budget like? Was it approved? Okay, you got the award. What was your budget like? Can I see what and what you put in for what and what? And then you can factor that, given the understanding that that has been already completed. So it was a while, but then we know there's inflation and things go up. So you can cost for inflation, but overall, it should be reasonable and within what you're proposing. So speak to people that have done it and do the actual sort of consideration in terms of the context and the activities. Hope that
Okay.
helps.
Yeah. Hope that helps, Arif Saptaji. If you have further questions, please let us know. Also, we found few of the participants asking for resources or list of organizer or tables for people, sheets for people. I think the TDR Global Asia account already shared a very helpful link to crowdfundinghealth.org. You can check those links, and maybe if any have some informations about resources, things that people might need to check out about crowdfunding. I think it's a rather new concept in our beloved TDR Global Asia community. But if you are keen to share a bit more of resources of what to read or what to expect, uh, please feel free to share, Doctor.
Yes. So the crowdfunding is a really, really good resource. It has examples. We do have extra resources, like extra resources, additional resources with links, and they're all open access. So I think someone has posted the link. Okay, thank you. So yes, the link has been posted to the crowdfunding, and that's for crowdfunding. You get a lot of information there. We did a review as well. You could get some list of references that can help you see what people have done in your area or in your region or in similar topic. That's for crowdfunding. For grant writing, our Search Global website is also very, very helpful, where we do archive the sort of slides and details of the Grantoton writing workshops. So that's a very helpful resource as well. It goes into details. Like I said, this is just 1 hour, but that's like a series of weeks. So you could actually look at different parts of the proposal and get more idea from really seasoned and experienced researchers that have won really, really big awards. So we actually get people to share from personal experiences of how this has worked or what hasn't worked for them. So the Search Global website has those grant autumn series that you can also see some more additional materials on points to consider when writing a grant proposal.
Okay. So I think there's plenty of our participants today that are still interested to ask for more, but we're actually on our end of allocated time. We're very sorry about everyone, about this everyone, but I think if you can give us a little closing speech for everyone, so they're most encouraged about trying to fund their first research. I think there's a lot of early career researchers here, some of researchers who are confused or rather feeling difficult to put idea together to compete for a grant. Maybe if you have some word of wisdom to us all.
Yeah, so my word of advice would be what I always tell myself and what my mentors always tell me. If anyone can do it, you can do it. All you need to do is just start. A lot of times we always tell ourselves that, oh, it's too competitive. I don't think I have the best idea. I don't think my project will be selected. But until you write and submit, you don't have a chance to be selected. So instead of saying, I can't do it, I won't do it, it's a waste of my time, do it and get into the pool for review. So until you submit that proposal, until you write and submit, you don't have a chance of getting funded at all. And with every time you write, you actually improve. So even if you're not funded in the first, second, or third application, it's not a waste of time. It's an experience and you're getting better and better. So the only way to get funding and do your project is to keep writing. The more you write, the better you get, and you're closer, you get closer to being funded, because with writing comes the experience. With submitting the application comes the opportunity of review and actual funding. So don't get stuck, don't be discouraged. Look for the right networks, look for people to review your work, share it to your grandmother who has no idea about what you're doing, and see if it makes sense to her. She's not a scientist, but she can give you feedback like, I don't understand, what does this mean? And then you can go back and break it down. And possibly you would find a reviewer that's just like your grandma, who would review and understand what you've written, and you actually get the grant. So my last words would be, don't give up, don't get discouraged. It doesn't make sense, but keep writing. It gets better and it brings you funding. I think I would close on that. But thank you very much once again for having me today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eneyi. This is a very, very insightful and amazing experience for us all. And we are nearing the end of our session today. But before we close the webinar, can we please take a picture to commemorate this moment together? Everyone, please open your camera and let's take a picture. Also, if you need any certificates, our team has already shared some links in the chat room, and you can fill out those links, and we will send you an e-certificate to your email within 14 days of workday. So, everyone, please open your camera and give your best smile. Okay, let's count. 3, 2, 1. One more time. 3, 2, 1. Okay, the last one, everyone. Give it your best smile and pose. 3, 2, 1. Yay! Thank you so much, everyone. A little message from our beloved TDR Global Asia while we're closing. Don't forget to join our newsletter and scan the TDR Global profile here. We have so much interesting venue and opportunities and information about fellowships and grant, informations about classes, webinar, and a lot of interesting events from TDR Global Asia. And if you have research and if you would like to showcase your research in our future webinars, please reach out to us at my email, agitiarapranoto@gmail.com. And we would really love to feature your work. We feature every researchers in our TDR Global Asia community every month. And more maybe if there's a lot of members who are wanting to share their research and their avenues to us. So that's all for today. We thank you very much, Dr. Eneyi, for joining us. Thank you so much for TDR Global, also the community, the TDR Global Africa and Asia that already grace us today, join us today. It's very amazing knowing that you guys came from different time zones. Thank you so much and have a great night, everyone. Bye-bye.